So this article today is from Bella Caledonia, and I really do think this hits the nail on a lot of heads when you hear people say, I voted to leave, but I didn't vote for racist reasons, because sooner or later there comes a time where you have to think back and look, I might have made an alliance with people who I don't agree with. So, absolution alongside hypocrisy is a key characteristic of Brexit, and it has been since day one. David Cameron sought to absolve himself of uncomfortable responsibilities as party leader, wanting to resolve internal Tory infighting in a national referendum on Britain's EU membership. Leave leaders like Boris Johnson, Michael Gove, Gayle Stewart sought to absolve themselves of them. Sought to solve themselves of uncomfortable facts, obliterating the truth, and then doing it some more. Some media outlets sought to absolve themselves of the need for accuracy, going for catchy headlines or what they called balance, even if there is no balance on facts. And some of the factual financial backers of the Leave campaigns sought to absolve themselves of the law. No wonder, therefore, that there should be a cumulative now in the making. Brexiteers are seeking to absolve themselves of the ever-increasing negative fallout of the EU referendum, and this is true. Brexiteers are trying to do this constantly. Well, we didn't say that. We didn't promise that, said Nigel Farage, even though many members of his party parroted that same line. Where are we? Yes, negative fallout of the EU campaign. Whatever they don't like, they dismiss as something that is the EU's fault, or the fault of the Remoaners, taking responsibility for their actions, which is true. Brexiteers haven't taken responsibility at all, and for the campaign they supported, not so much. For of course there isn't a big surprise. Combusting pipe dreams are never a pretty sight, but with regards of what happened next, if Brexit supporters continue to cherry-pick their reality, there will never be a chance to overcome the divisions they have opened up. They need to take responsibility, and I've talked about this before in last week's video. You know, it's Brexiteers that need to do the reaching out. We don't need to do the reaching out at all. We said these are the consequences, but every time we are trying to have again, even on this channel, you will see when I'd say there's this consequence or this is going to happen, there will always be some Brexiteer who comes forward and say, oh, that's just Project Fear. You know, how about you actually talk about how Brexit might not lead to that? And where your facts and information on why that's not going to be the case. Nowhere is the need for more responsibility for more urgent than with respect to the situation of the EU citizens at home in the UK like me and our British friends who live in other EU countries. We have lived in limbo for over 900 days now, and we are faced with specific immediate threats that apply only to us. Threats that are only part of our lives now because of the EU referendum. For EU citizens at home in the UK, the immediate specific threat is the requirement for us to apply for so-called settled status if we want to stay. There is nothing automatic about the process. We have known this for over a year now, not because this application process has been frequently cast as a simple registration. It is only now that the wider public is becoming more aware of its real implementations, in part due to the trial scheme having started and more problems with it, having more problems with it than are being revealed daily. But a specific trigger was a clip produced and shared by the Home Office. The clip with smiling faces, stock photographs and upbeat music, where we used to where we used to make look nice the fact that 300.6 million of us are already at home in the UK, and we will have to apply so that we have a chance of remaining in our home. The impact of the Home Office clip was immediate. EU citizens were disgusted by how this portrayed the process as something to smile about, and they released it during the Christmas holidays. This was also heavily criticised. Many others, new voices joining the criticism too, were upset about learning about the scheme and its presentation in the Home Office for the first time. Laudably audible amongst the critics was Fraser Nelson, editor of The Spectator, a Brexit supporter, editing a Brexit supporting weekly that also gives endless platform to writers spinning hate against immigrants and EU citizens such as Ron Liddell. Yet it was absolution that Mr. Nelson sought. It was quote-unquote just awful, he tweeted, criticising the clip's sinister tone. Awful and sinister, suitable word to describe the rhetoric employed against immigrants, EU citizens and freedom of movement during the EU referendum campaign. Awful and sinister. Visually depicted on newspaper and front newspaper and paper after paper, and as well on the Breaking Point poster and many other materials in the 2016. Awful and sinister. Absolution from it cannot be had by those who look the other way, when awful and sinister is essentially the hallmark of Brexit. Of course, the idea of absolution, of cherry-picking the reality one likes, is very appealing. I am sure nobody would love to do that more than all of us EU citizens. We would love to cherry-pick politicians like John Canaria and Caroline Lucas, who have been supporting us for a long time, and cherry-pick the Scottish Government as our government because they have given EU citizens so much hope. But we do not have the luxury of cherry-picking anything. We are forced to own the fallout of the EU referendum campaign because it is our life now. That is why Brexit absolution, like what pursued Mr. Nelson, cannot be just left unchallenged. The fallout from leaving the EU as policy Brexiteers are all about is the one they must own. No ifs, no buts, no cherry picking. For once, Brexit really does mean Brexit. And that's again the reality. This is what we've said since day one. That there was no plan. Nigel Farage never presented a plan. He claims he has a plan, by the way, but he will only show it to Theresa May. And again, it's hilarious because he wants the publicity. Theresa May's called me in, and then he can, do a PR spin about it, whatever. The reality is, if he has a plan, he should have presented it and should be presenting it and should be saying, look at my amazing plan. Shouldn't be Theresa May be following this plan? Of course he doesn't have one, so he can't do anything because there is no way that Nigel Farage and any of these Brexiteers would be doing a better job. This is why one of my main criticisms of Corbyn saying, we'll carry on, if we get in power, we'll carry on with Brexit. How? How are you going to improve Brexit, Jeremy? Theresa May has gone and got the best deal she possibly could. Oh dear. But there you go. I agree. There's lots of people who, again, in my comment section for years have said, they don't like the racism that Brexit brought about. Yet during the campaign, you conveniently turned away and ignored the racism that was there. You helped to open up these divisions.